1834. In the dark of the London night, a violent fire rages through the very heart of the British Empire, Westminster Palace. For centuries, this complex of buildings had been the command center of British power and a towering symbol of its strength. Now, as flames turn the palace into a roaring inferno, thousands watch in shock and horror, wondering what will become of their mighty government.
The fire of 1834 had dealt a devastating blow to the political nerve center of the British Empire. Westminster Palace had stood in some form or another since the late 11th century during the time of William the Conqueror. And now these ruins had the British people wondering, would Parliament ever meet again in this place? Would Parliament ever rise and vote again in these magnificent buildings that had given birth to the modern political process? Well, a royal commission was appointed to decide this very thing, and the royal commission decided, yes, Parliament would be reconstructed in this place. But now a more difficult question came up. What would these buildings look like? Would they be neo-Gothic, French, Italian, or English? Or would they be the perpendicular style of Elizabethan Tudor or English Renaissance? A sort of a civic war happened for 2 years until 1836. The Royal Commission, over 97 proposals, chose the plan of a man named Charles Barry, who was a fan of the Italian Renaissance, but he combined those elements with neo-Gothic, and he gave us this, the Houses of Parliament we have today. A sort of a mishmash of styles, but a stunning mishmash nonetheless.
From the ruins of the old Parliament, British architects would design a government building of staggering proportions, twice the size of the U.S. Capitol. Constructed of sand-colored limestone called Anston, the palace would take up 8 acres of land, with towers soaring as much as 320 feet into the sky. It was decided that one of these massive structures would be a grand clock tower. Today, we know it as Big Ben.
You're able to measure time much more accurately in the 19th century, and time is important. Time comes to mean money, and there's something of a revolution in the 19th century about timekeeping. So if you're going to have this latest building, yeah, a clock tower goes on it.
When the royal astronomer George Airy announced his requirements for the clock, people were stunned. It would be the largest and most ambitious timepiece the world had ever seen.
Now, Airy's demands for excellence were fairly rigorous. For instance, one of his requirements was that the clock be accurate to within 1 second every 24-hour period, and furthermore, that the accuracy reports of this clock be telegraphed on down the River Thames to the Greenwich Observatory twice a day. Now, this was not the 21st century age of information. A digital clockmaker today, this would not be shooting for the moon, but a 19th century clockmaker, to make such a great clock in a huge tower with such heavy striking mechanisms, pushing such heavy hands, with such precision and such accuracy that would be exposed to the rain, wind, and elements second after second, hour after hour, week after week, year after year. This was absolutely unimaginable. It was like going to the moon. So Parliament, rightfully, asked Airy if he might come up with a plan that was a little bit more reasonable, a little less expensive. But Airy was adamant. And thus the clock today we call Big Ben, which is really the name of the bell, became the standard for timekeeping the world over.
Incredibly, it was an amateur clockmaker by the name of Edmund Beckett Denison who designed the famous clock when all other experts failed to meet the challenge of pinpoint accuracy. Like all clocks of this type, Denison's would be powered by weights, gears, and a pendulum. But Big Ben's design featured a groundbreaking new device that would protect the pendulum from outside forces. 2 metal arms control a wheel with 3 spokes. With each swing of the pendulum, one of the arms opens, allowing the wheel to turn a notch. This regulates the movement of the clock. When rain or snow weighs down the clock's hands, the arms isolate the pendulum so it keeps swinging without being affected. To fine-tune the clock's accuracy, timekeepers simply reach into their own pockets.
pennies are used as part of its regulating its accuracy. By adding or taking away one of these old pennies from the pendulum, the clock can actually gain or lose 2/5 of a second in 24 hours.
With this brilliant but simple method, the clock became world famous as a marvel of precision engineering.
The clock tower over the Parliament at the centre of the empire has a peculiarly powerful symbolic importance. It's as if time itself is governed by the British.
In addition to the clock, a series of bells was needed to toll the passing time, with an enormous central bell ringing on the hour. A bell founder by the name of George Mears cast the giant bell to Denison's precise specifications, and Big Ben was born, weighing a staggering 13 tons. Huge crowds lined the streets of London and cheered as Big Ben was transported to the finished clock tower in 1858. It has been filling London with its distinctive rings ever since.
London grew as a city tremendously. It was really the first large-scale conurbation in the world. And as a city, it had to have its icons, and the ultimate icon being the mother of parliaments, the parliamentary building with Big Ben as a symbol of the strength and the power of the British Empire.
By the mid-19th century, Great Britain had set the gold standard for technological achievement. But under the reign of a young, naive queen, a crisis would strike London and push it to the brink of disaster. A flock of birds landed on the minute hand of Big Ben in 1949 and set the time back 5 minutes.